All right, so part of the lessons that we'll learn this semester is reading and writing to um, text files. So I have this is just on my desktop. I've got employees text files, and I've got a last name, first name, and then their salary for each of these. And these are just, all this stuff is just sample stuff that you guys should be testing out on your end, okay? And then I've got let me see, a new salary. Where's it at? New salary 2021 that's blank, because ideally what I'm going to do is I'm going to demonstrate my program where it reads in the first and last name, and then it writes to the new salary, and it would take this number and multiply it by a 20% increase in the salary. So this would be 2,400, this would be 3,600, and so forth, okay? So this is what I wrote. Now, the big thing here you got to allow for the input and output stream library, because there's functions like open that are in this library that you're going to have to be able to use, and .end of file. So anyway, I've got my input stream. I define it as an input stream, and I call it in file, and I got my output stream. I call it out file. So this is the input file stream variable, output file stream variable. I've got a string first name, last name, and a double salary. And I got my input file that I open. Now, in your book, you always have something like this. This won't work because I have it saved on the desktop, and the desktop directory is that. Now, you have to use double dashes, because if you use single, first of all, I'm not really sure it will compile in the first place. And that's actually a good compiler to remind you, because there are things called escape sequences, like that -n is a new line in a print function. So if you had something like -n, like C:" new file or something like that, and that was new folder, and that was what the folder was called. It would read -n as an escape sequence as entering a new line. So if you put double dashes in there, and what are those? Those are backslashes, I believe. I always get backslashes and forward slashes mixed up in my brain, but those are double backslashes. It won't really read it as a escape sequence. So this is the folder that they're in. And so here's another thing too. Like, once you have your folder, you can click up here, and then that gives you your folder directory, and you can just right click and copy that and put that in there. So this opens your input file, and this opens your output file. And you got to make sure you can't write to something that's not open, so you have to open it first. And then, so this line of code basically is just error checking. So if the input file is not open or the output file is not open, print, here, or, maybe something more formal like error, the input or output file were not opened. Okay, and it'll make you exit. Else, we do a while loop. So while we're not at the end of the file, so you want to make sure it's reading through every single one of these until we get to the end of the file. So while it's not the end of the file, then you read each one. Now, I know we're not on the loops chapter and iteration, but my guess is for this capstone project, if you're going to implement reading and writing to files, you're going to have to read all the different data that you have. Check to see if it's the end of the file, and if it is, then you'll be done with it. If not, just keep reading each line, okay? So this reads each line, and so the input, each of these, now you're basically space delimited. So each space, you know, you're putting in the first name, or sorry, this is getting the first name. We want to do this will be the last name, and then we'll change this to first, and then we'll spit out the last name and the first name, because that's kind of the order that it's in. I've got Brown Tom, so that's the last name. That'll get read into the last name variable, Tom the first name, and then their salary. And so that gets in, that's the input file, and then for the output file, it's going to write the last name space, first name space, and then I take that salary variable here that gets input, and I just multiply it by 1.2, which gives it a 20% increase. Once all that's done, you need to make sure that you close your input and output files, okay? So right now, just let me make sure, like, this will always have your data in it. You don't want to delete that, because then you'll have to type it in again, and that's, you know, that's not good. So anyway, my new salary for 2021 is blank. There's nothing in there. So if I run this, now I think I changed some. I'm going to rebuild my solution and just make sure I don't have any errors, because I changed a couple of these variables up. Alright, so if I run it, you know, I didn't get that error because my file's opened, and so I can just close this, and then I can go in here and check and see the new salary, Brown Tom, and like I said, if I open up the original one, you know, here's 2,000, so 2,000 times 1.2 is now 2,400. So there's your new data, and I guess you could play around with making it a you know, putting the decimal place in. I didn't really mess with that. So anyway, that's that. So make sure you guys are testing this, because again, if you're doing this, you're going to definitely need to know how to do it in a while loop format, because the book just shows you one example doing one line, you know, just only one. It only shows, where's my employee file? Yeah. They only show you like how to do it with one line, you know, and that's kind of disservice to you. I know that, you know, maybe they'll show you in the book later on how to do, you know, multiple lines. But you definitely want to make sure you're doing multiple lines and being able to understand that. So anyway, this video is done.